So we're continuing with James Joyce, and James Joyce is the Dubliners. Been talking about the Dubliner for quite some time now. This is perhaps is it our second or third class on the Dubliners and on James Joyce? I'm asking you. Is it our second or third on? Yeah, this is our second. Okay, good. Um, I think by now you have a sense of what James Joyce is all about. You have a sense of what his novel writing style is, right? As far as uh, if I read the calendar correct, we don't have two gallons, and we don't have the brooding house tales. I mean, we have obviously clay and a painful case, right? Update me. Go and check the calendar. Um, anyway, they are short stories. It is true that we may stick to the prescribed short stories, but yeah, I don't mind doing the others because they are all, like I said, parts of a larger whole, and they can give us perhaps scope and insights into what um, Joyce had in mind in terms of themes and ideas. Okay. Um, so, like always, you need to kind of connect the ideas that you kind of take out of the short stories to what you know about James Joyce, what you know about Dublin, and what you know about Ireland in general. And this is pretty much what we've been doing. We've been trying to kind of connect the dots. Again, you would read these short stories against the idea of unity, the fact that I mean the 15 short stories are meant to give us, some kind of um, an overall idea about Ireland and about Dublin. Uh, and of course, within this big idea, you would have, I wouldn't say small ideas, I would say uh, um, different aspects of this big idea. Um, okay, it's good. It's good that you read them. Reading them will enhance your experience with James Joyce and also the Dabna. It's good that you have read them, yeah, Al Ustaz. No problem. Okay. So let's look at the gallery of short stories that we have covered, and you're welcome, and the short stories that we are doing tonight, inshallah. If you can remind me, we started with what the sisters, and then we had an encounter, and then Eveline, and today we're doing clay and a painful case, and if time permits, we may also talk about the dead, and with the dead, um, we will have like a closure to the short stories and to this part of the course. Okay. So, like I always do, we start with, because it's the same effect and the same experience, and this is actually what James Joyce meant. You don't read a short story independent of the other. You need to look at them all within the project that he had in mind. Remember when he spoke about these short stories and what they reflect? Obviously they reflect the life of Dublin and the life of the Dubliners, and he said that Dublin and Dublin's life is pretty much like the life of a human being, where you normally go through a number of stages. Remember the stages that he spoke about? Spoke about childhood, spoke about adolescence, and then maturity, and then you go to public life. Um, and also, and this is something that you may have discovered reading his different short stories. He normally focuses on the young generation, whether the young generations would be adolescents, or even children, and also young people, perhaps young adults, and he doesn't concern himself much with the old generation, because for him the young generation is the ones that he is pinning his hopes on. He has high hopes and great expectations when it comes to the young generation, simply because young generations are normally uh, um, open to new ideas, while the old generation and old people uh, um, are so set in their old ways, of course. Um, Again, you're going to have this conflict um, repeated. It's a pattern that gets repeated as you proceed from one short story to the other. The conflict between the old generation and the young generation. We have seen that already in the two sisters. Why do I call it the two? I keep repeating the two. I even wrote that as a title of the video, right? So it's not the two sisters, even if they are two sisters. It's the sisters without this two kind of thing. Excuse my perhaps old age. Okay. So this is what they call. I don't know whether you're familiar with this phrase or not. They call it cognitive decline. So I'm having my cognitive decline moments. So cognitive declines means that as you get older, you have you have diminished memory. You have your mental capacities get they decrease, and the next thing you know is that you're suffering from perhaps dementia and all these kinds of things. Again, we're talking about the clash between the old and the young generation, and we have seen that repeated in the short stories that we have read so far. Um, Let me ask you whether you have revisited the short stories or not. Have you perhaps had the opportunity to go over and read them? Because, like I said, every time you read them with fresh eyes. You come up with fresh original ideas. Have you had the chance to do just that? I'm asking you. Okay, Nof is saying no, just the first reading. Um, yeah, Nurul Malki or Mulki. Okay. Shireen Hamdallah is saying yes, but not all of them. Okay. In fact, I have read over it once and read summaries. They You don't need to read summaries. Instead of reading summaries, you read the short story itself, because these are short stories. If somebody summarizes them, so what? يعني, how can they be reduced? They are already reduced, because by definition they are short stories. Unless you're talking about analysis in the middle. Normally what I have seen are summaries, and within the summaries you have assessments and analysis of those who do the summary, or by those who do the summaries, or okay, right. So again, we'll go over them one by one, but let's perhaps remind ourselves of the ideas against which these short stories are written. Remember the idea of paralysis, spoke about paralysis, and we're likely to speak about it today or tonight. Um, I mean, Dubliners as a city text. This is very important because we're talking about Dublin, and Dublin is a city, and we're talking about the people who live in Dublin, who are the Dubliners. So it's a city text, and when you talk about a city text has features and characteristics. What else? Like we always say, I mean, James Joyce is against the idea of dogma, against the idea of sticking to old traditions. Of course, no one is against traditions, but if they are stumbling blocks, nobody would welcome them. Again, he is against the old generations and the old generation in the sense that they they don't welcome new ideas. He is also against radicalism when it comes to people promoting the idea that they have to go all the way back to their Irish history and their Irish culture, and they have to revive that. Obviously, he is saying, or he is implying, because he didn't explicitly say it, he is implying that if this is politically motivated, we don't need it. If it's innocent and if it's meant to perhaps move us forward, if this is some kind of fuel that we need so that we can move forward, that's okay. But if it is politically motivated, uh, is it if it is part of our agenda against the British? No, we've been trying for quite some time, and we have obviously lost our breath and our energies in the middle or in the process. So let's focus on the future. Let's be open to the content and to the world. Let's embrace the world. Okay. Whether his characters do that or not, this is one of the questions that we need to perhaps address ourselves to. The characters that we have seen are not embracing the world in one way or another, except for, of course, the boys in an encounter. They don't really. And I'm talking about the other characters other than those in the encounter or an encounter. So his characters do not seem to be kind of following his advice. He wants people to set themselves free. He wants people to travel. He wants people to embrace the world. But none of the characters that we have seen so far is willing to do that. And by the way, embracing the world does not have to be by only traveling and moving places and moving countries. You can be sitting at home in your country, and you can be achieving that if you have open ideas, if you if you have liberal ideas, if you kind of perhaps assess those elements of tradition and see which of them is fit and which of them is no longer working. So it's not about the physical movement. You can move mentally and intellectually, and this is actually what he is after. Because I mean, not so many people can afford the idea of traveling and immigrating and stuff like that. Okay, so again, we're going to go to the short stories and move through them one by one until we reach the two short stories that we have featured tonight, which are Clay and A Painful Case. So again, let's have a fresh look on and at the sisters. So in terms of theme, I'm sorry, in terms of plot, not much happens. So you're talking about a boy who happens to be also the narrator, the first person narrator, who is reflecting on on the fact that Father Flynn, his old friend, uh, uh, on his death, or his obviously approaching death. And through his revelations, we get to know a lot about Father Flynn. Sometimes other people are given. We hear from other people, or we read from the revelations only through the eyes of the child narrator, because we're not given the opportunity, because this is first person narrative, and we said first person narrative has limitations, and one of them would be is that you are uh, at the mercy of the narrator. You're not given the opportunity to see or to listen or to read what the other characters are saying. So you normally have your perceptions of them, your ideas about them from the narrator. And the problem with child narrators, if any, would be that their imagination is obviously vivid, and they can make up stuff, and also the fact that you cannot really rely heavily on them. This is the bad side. The good side with child narrators would be the idea that they look at life in an innocent way. Innocent as they are, they give us fresh look into life, which is not very practical even, but at least it's a different way of looking at the world. We're so used to adult, narrators, and how they look at the world, and we have we kind of expect what they would say if they are the narrators. When you have child narrators, you normally have some kind of relief, a momentary relief from the big issues that adult narrators may bring while narrating. Okay, so we have the child narrator who is who is friends with Father Flynn, the clergyman, or the guy who works, the priest, and we get to know that the guy is dying, the old man is dying, and through the revelations of the narrator, we get to know that there is some kind of, there are dark spots that people need to perhaps explore and uncover in this kind of relationship. Um, we said on if you look at the relationship metaphorically, you would talk about the idea of generations and the fact that the old generation is in full control, and the young generation is obviously pushing back. The narrator is confused. He doesn't know. At one point, he's happy, and he doesn't hide it. He's happy that the Father Flynn is dying, And at another point, and when he even when he died, and at another point you feel that he had those affinities with him. He relates to him in one يعني in different on different occasions. So the relationship is very confused and confusing to the reader. Again, what will come out of it would be the fact that you have a generation gap, the fact that you're having an old generation with old ideas that does not want to relent and give way to the young generation. So it's with good riddance, as it were, that the child narrator is receiving the news. I mean, it's as if it's he's saying, yeah, with good riddance. When somebody that you don't like, I mean, leaves a place or perhaps dies, you say with good riddance. I mean, you, uh, got rid of him. What else would you like to talk about when we talk about the two sisters? Ideas that relate to what we've been talking about, whether we're talking about James Joyce or the age, or even what you know about Dublin. Mm. You're silent today. No new ideas, no fresh ideas. So where is everyone? Where is Nabila, Noof, Qamar, Sheikha, Al-Ustaz, Sarah? Somebody's trying to type something if I'm waiting for her. Al-Ustaz is saying Dublin, obviously is asking a question. He's saying, is Dublin a rural city or an urban city? It is a city that is both rural and urban, yeah, Ustaz. But this is one of the conflicts that we have. Okay, so it is a city, okay, that should be opening to the world, but it has rural values to it. And obviously, those rural values are not modern, and they are ultra conservative, because if we talk about um, this is the west of Ireland, where farmers and rural people live, and they normally have very dogmatic ideas. They are under the complete control of the clergy, the people of the church, and their ideas are not open at all. So this is the conflict that we have. It is a city that whose dwellers have affinities with the village, with village life, with its in the Irish context, village life is all about dogma, about old conventions, about people who are so set in their old ways. Kamar is saying here, I'm sorry, doctor, I'm feeling a bit ill today. Okay, I'm sorry to hear that, ya Kamar. If I get well soon, if you'd like to leave, it's okay, no problem. Um, okay, so again, we're talking about the sisters, and we're talking about we're reading the sisters against the background of the age against what we know about Ireland and the Dublin and even uh, Dublin. Did I say the Dubliners? Dublin and Dubliners. Perhaps I spoke about that at one point, the idea of symbolism, and I said that in a short story, writers normally um, use symbols abundantly. Why would they use symbols? Because symbols would spare them a lot of time and space that is not normally accessible to them, given the fact that the short story has to be short. So whenever you read a short story, you need to be also on the lookout about the symbols that may exist in a short story. Symbols can be colors, can be names of people. Um, okay. Um, can be moods and atmospheres. These are all signs that can give you clues about what direction the story is headed. So keep looking for symbols in short stories. Again, they would complement whatever may be left unfinished for the obvious limitations that we have in a short story. So have you uh, let's talk about the colors. If you still remember the short story, what is the predominant color? What is the dominant color, if you still remember? Okay, so Nof is saying maybe brown. Okay. Qamar is saying maybe gray. So whether they are brown or gray, so what's that? What do they indicate? What would be the associations of these colors? So you don't have, Nof is saying we have dark colors. We don't have, bright colors. Fahd is saying that that would be reflecting sadness and sorrow. Okay. So yeah, Ustaz, can you focus on what we're talking about? Forget about giving, general impressions about the whole volume of short stories. Let's just focus on the sisters. We're discussing the sisters, and I'm sure you have read the sisters. Okay. Okay. So colors, like you're saying, they are for the most part dark colors, reflecting the mood, even superficially. If everybody is not happy with Father Flynn, but they have to fake it. It's the guy is dead, and they are in mourning for him. That's only natural that they would wear black. It's only natural that you would have, dark lights. Okay, marking the sad occasion. But even this can tell you a great deal about what kind of characters we have. It can point to the hypocrisy that society have. Or this can be even universal. We're not talking about Ireland and Dublin now. The idea that sometimes you have somebody that you don't have you have, yes, like Kamaris, hypocritical characters. You may be not in on good terms with somebody, and when he leaves a place, for example, he's leaving his job, You would go and talk nicely to him, and deep down you're happy that he left. It's the same thing here. I mean, lots of people were not happy with the perhaps the performance of Flynn, Father Flynn, and there were rumors that he was not morally upright. But they went to the wake and they were in mourning for him. But this is also one of the issues that you normally have with I mean, societies like these. Okay, you don't have to be genuine when it comes to traditions. Traditions say that if there is a wake, you have to go and attend, and you have to perhaps wear black, and you sometimes you have to be in mourning when you go back home. This is what we used to do. I don't know whether people are doing it in my hometown anymore or not. The idea that when somebody dies, I mean, you keep the television off for a number of days, whether this guy is a friend or a fool. Okay. Uh, uh, um, so this is one of the I mean the traditions that perhaps Joyce is fighting, the idea of hypocrisy. Um, he wants you to tell it like it is, like they say. Okay. Again, this is one of the things that we have in the sisters. We have this clash of ideas, and this clash of ideas has two sides to it. You have the young generation as represented by the child narrator, and you have, on the other hand, Father Flynn and what he represents. He represents dogma and conservative ideas. He represents religion and what Joyce sees as regression and backwardness, because like I said, he may be saying that we have tried the clergy and people of the church, and they have been dominating for quite some time, and we're still poor, we're still you know, we're not progressive, we're not making any progress. If we compare ourselves to London, Paris, and even Rome, we're not as good, we're not as advanced. So the clergy, perhaps the death of Father Flynn at the start of the short story is, perhaps is a sign or is a call for all people like him, whether he represents religion or he represents all generation. They have to step down. One of them, or the representative, has stepped down very early in the short story. It is as if James Joyce is trying. It's high time that that the members of the old generation step down. They have to leave their places, their decision making places for younger spirits, for younger blood, and something can come out of this replacement, out of this change. Um, what else about the sisters? Let's move to the second short story. And the second short story was An Encounter, if you still remember. And An Encounter is also a short story that doesn't have action in it. I mean, it's all about the ideas that you may come out from the encounters of the different characters. The title is very significant, like we said the other day, because we have a real encounter, and encounters would also require two sides to them, two parties. So the encounter is between whom and whom, if you still remember. I'm talking on as an abstract level, by the way. Yes, okay. So Kamar is saying that this is the um, surface level. This is the literal level where you have the two boys and the old man. Okay, Nof is saying the new generation and the old generation. Okay, good. So who is representing? At one point, you would be talking about the two boys and the old man as representatives of the two generations. But this is obviously not the end of it, right? The school that they skipped on that day is also a representation of the old generation, is also a representation of old ideas, right? While the two boys and their inclinations and their liberal inclinations would represent the new generation, right? So what kind of material did they have at school? Remember, there was this comparison between what those boys read in their free time and what is imposed on them, and I mean the subjects that they take, the books that the school prescribes. Kamar is saying Latin and Bible study, right? So for them, this is it doesn't. It's not light-hearted, right? It's not. It doesn't obviously address and engage their imagination, their I mean young souls and spirits. They they want something that would take them away from perhaps the here and the now. Okay, and this is what they found where when in their free time they do what? They read what? Yes. So wild American magazines and Wild West stories. Are you familiar with these kinds of magazines and these kind of Wild West stories? I mean, just look at America, the US, in the 19th century and early 20th century, and Ireland. So Ireland and England would represent the old world, right? With its rigidity, with its dogmas, with its old ideas. While the USA or America would represent the new world. And the new world is about new ideas, about open space, right? About opportunities, about making it big, right? But this is again the clash that we're having, the clash between the school and those who are in charge of the school, who are old, who represent the old generation with its dogmas, with its conservative education that is rooted in religion and in classical languages, right? So this is on the one hand. On the other hand, you have the liberal ideas that the students read about in stories and the sense of adventure that they desire. So even the students have this within them. They have the clash within themselves. They have this conflict, whether to kind of subscribe to what the school is dictating, or to give vent or to give way to their wild imaginations, and to kind of try to fly away from the here and the now. And they did relent to their imagination at one point, and they decided to skip school on that day, remember? In search for what? In search of adventure and uh, new experience, fresh experiences, right? Freedom, like Noof is saying. Okay. Um, we spoke about the old man and what he represents. Obviously, the old man is presented or is portrayed in um, the worst of manners, if you like. He represents the old generation. He is also representing the hypocrisy of the old world. He can be in front of people. When you meet him for the first time, you feel that he is respectable and he is nice, and this is the feelings that the boys had at the beginning. They started to talk to him and engage in conversations until he started to show his true color or colors, right? Yeah, Kamar is saying that he is creepy and questionable, but this is not the feeling that they get when they first met him. Yeah, Kamar. Innocent as they are, they approached him like you approach any old man. You treat him in the nicest of manners because I mean, he's like your father, your grandfather, right? And he started to even talk to them in a nice way at the beginning, but he obviously he had an agenda, right? And then he started to show his true colors over time. Again, we're talking about the idea of hypocrisy. In front of so many people, this guy is respectable and respected and everything. Okay, until perhaps sometime when he trusts you, he starts to show what he is all about, and this is exactly what he did, right? Again, this is the old generation, and this is the hypocrisy that some sectors of society are exhibiting. Okay, you can be saying nice stuff, you can be preaching very nice stuff, but you practice something else. Again, this is one of perhaps the else and evils that James Joyce is trying to expose in this short story. There is a great deal of light shed on the character of this old man, right? What else about the short story? An encounter. So as you can see, the short story or an encounter is a battlefield on which you have two forces are fighting. You have the forces of the young generation as represented by the boys, and on the other hand you have the school and you have the old man representing the old generation. The old man would represent society with its false traditions, while the school, and due to the fact that it is a religious school, the school would represent you know, religion, and would be representing, you know, Catholic schools were for the most part you know, religious or religion schools. So the school with its prescribed, you know, courses that focus on religion, on manners, on rigidity, would represent religion. Okay, so let's move to the third story, and the third story that we had was Eveline, right? You need to also check why this time around we have a name. In the previous two stories, we didn't have a name. This time around, we have a name. There is a technical reason for not having a name. Perhaps with the first one, um, it's very rare that you find a first person narrator coming out at the beginning and say, my name is Ali, for example. But one reason why you sometimes don't have names with first person narratives would be the idea that it would be too direct to come out as a first person narrator and say, my name is Ali, my name is Sam. Okay. um, Perhaps there are other reasons that I would like to discuss with you. Back to Eveline. Eveline has a name. Somebody's saying conflict between old generation and young generation. Old generation in favor of conservatism and young generation agrees. Yes, yeah, agrees with modern. Yes, that's true. Yes. Okay. So what do you have to say about Eveline? I trust that you all have read it. So Sarah did. Who else? Okay, Kamar did. Okay. So let's first of all talk about the narrative voice. Do we have first or third person narrative? The narrator is first person or third person? Okay. So it's third person. Okay. So we spoke about the advantage that short stories and novels that have third person over novels and short stories that have first person. So what is good about novels and short stories that have third person narrators, if any? Hmm. You yourself feel more comfortable with which style? First person style or third person? Okay. So Kamar is saying third person because we're given more information about all the characters. Yeah. Okay. Sarah is saying third person is more reliable. Yeah. That's yes. You're not with third person. You can hear other people talk about their issues and problems. But with first person narrative, you are like I said, at um, the mercy of the first person narrator. He has access to, he is the only one who has access to all the characters, including himself. Okay? You're not given the opportunity to hear the other characters speak. You only, uh, hear them or read them through the perspective of the first person narrator. He does not give, this style does not give you actually the opportunity to hear the other characters. All your information you get from the first person narrator. Sarah is saying with third person we are able to see different perspectives. Yes. At least you're not at the mercy of the first person narrator, who is sometimes a child, who is sometimes um, um, a mentally disturbed individual, who is sometimes biased, who is sometimes representing the author himself with his prejudices and bias. Okay, yeah, okay. So Kamar is saying with third person you have more of a panoramic view of what takes place. Yes. Okay. So what is happening in Eveline? We have, so the central character this time around is not a boy, right? Is not a child or boy or boys. We have a woman, right? And this is pretty much what Jim Joyce is trying to stress. I am addressing and I am giving space to sectors of society that are normally downtrodden, that they are normally not very appreciated, like women, for example. Women, of course, in Irish traditions wouldn't assume big roles because this is, again, this is a conservative society where men are all in all. These regressive and culturally decadent societies have men on top of the ladder and women assuming very low position in the grand scheme of things, if you like. They are not very much appreciated, and you know, sensitive as he is, James Joyce is aware of this issue and he is addressing it in his short stories. So the character is, or the main character is Eveline, and she happens to be the titular character. The titular character means the character who gives his or her name to the work. So the titular character here is Eveline. Um, and how much do you know about Eveline by now? Let's talk about Eveline. What do you have to say about Eveline? Hmm. Nothing? You don't know much about Eveline? Okay. So Sarah is saying she is overcome with nostalgia as she misses her mom and neighbors, and her father uh, is Okay, his father is violent and sometimes he is not, right? Okay. Fahd is saying she had an abusive father. She also had to work to support her father. Yeah. Nabila is saying reluctant, she couldn't make a decision. And what was the decision in Nabila, if you still remember? What was the decision that she was about to take? Still remember? Okay. Fad is saying you get a better overview of all characters, not to the opinion of the narrator. Yeah. This is way back. Okay. She had the chance to escape with her beloved, but freezes at the last moment, and does not know whether to went back to go home or okay. Kamar leaving the country with her. Eh, she okay, leaving the country with her. Yeah, with her lover Frank. Hala is saying she promised her mom to stay in the country. Yeah, that's good. Okay. So it's simply about Eveline, who is obviously with the demise and the death of her mom, is the only female member of a given family. And typical of the traditions of the time, you don't think of, I mean, getting out of the house in terms of, jobs and marriage if uh, if your family needs you. And who decides on this need? It would be the family, not you as a female. And this is exactly what happened with her. Her mom died, and before she died, obviously there was this promise that Eveline made to her mom. She said that she's not going to perhaps get married or leave the house until um, her brothers are settled, until uh, everybody else is settled and stable. Um, Whether her mom pressurized her into this decision, whether she was perhaps exercising some kind of mental pressure on her, it wasn't a direct pressure, that would be another issue. The idea would be that if the mother didn't push her to do what she did, it would be society and the conventions of society that says that females have to stay uh, um, unmarried, jobless until their male counterparts are settled. Okay. Nabila is saying she suspends herself between traveling and taking a new experience or staying. Again, we're talking again about the pressures, the family pressures, and the societal pressures on the female, right? Females are not thought of as flesh and blood human beings who have feelings and emotions, and at one point they would want to get married and have an independent life. Females, as represented in these short stories, are so taken for granted by the Irish society. So in this case, Eveline would be representing all the female species in Ireland at the time, with this lack of fulfillment. They are not fulfilled. They cannot be fulfilled because they have to fulfill the needs of their families and their societies first. Okay? And then perhaps after her brothers are settled and everything is fine, they become old. Where they can, if they are old, they can't get married. And when they don't get married, people, this same society is going to refer to them as spinsters, right? Which is obviously which has negative connotations, right? So you wouldn't allow me to get married, and when I get old, you uh, refer to me in negative terms. So again, this is hypocrisy. Um, this is exploiting women, and this is again a typical image of women in so many societies, including the Irish at the time, right? So again, what Eveline did is in keeping with the traditions of her time. But obviously, this is something that she wouldn't, deep down as a human being, she wouldn't be too happy about, because she's foregoing prospects of a happy life with the one she has chosen for a husband, right? She is giving up on her hopes of a better life. Okay. um, Again, Eveline, um, lots of people are perhaps frustrated with Eveline, and they say that she's not strong-willed. She should have done it, and some other people are saying that I mean, it wasn't love that bound her to Frank. It wasn't really love. She made up her mind already even before going to the dock, and then having second thoughts and going all the way back. Okay. Again, whenever I look at Eveline, I look at her as a representation of women always and everywhere. The idea that I mean, society has male as it is has high expectations. You fulfill and meet these expectations at your own risk, and when you fulfill them and you get tired and sick, society does not accept you. Okay. We'll stop for 5 minutes, and when we come back, we'll finish with Eveline and move to Clay, inshallah. If you haven't read Clay, you have perhaps 5 minutes to go and check it, so that we can have a conversation about it. I'll see you in 5 minutes, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Are you back? Okay. Bismillah. So we're talking about, or we were talking about Eveline, and we spoke about Eveline as as a representation of women always and everywhere. And this is especially so with the Irish environment where women are thought very little of, right? And this is typical of conservative societies, like I said. And this is one of the issues that Jim Joyce is addressing, the idea of women and their roles and the little status that they are assigned in societies for all the hard work that they, of course, do, for all the influence that they even um, exercise on their families and their children. Still, they are not given what they deserve in terms of prestige, in terms of recognition and acceptance. So we're moving within and these parameters, whether they are local or universal. Okay. Um, what else? What else do you want to talk about in Eveline, if any? Any ideas that you would like to share about Eveline? Insights that you get out of reading the short story for the second and the third time? Okay. Let's move to the uh, is it one, two, three, four? Let's move to the fourth short story that we have, which is Clay. For those who have read Clay, please type one. It's okay, Al Ustaz. It's okay, no problem. So this would only enhance your experience, yeah, Ustaz. It's okay, no problem. Okay, so Kamar did. Who else read the short story? Clay. So only Kamar and Fahd, I think. Fahd and Kamar. Okay. Hi. So Clay, Noof is saying, I thought we will take the other two stories. What are the other? I mean the two stories that Fahd or what's his name or Ustaz is speaking about. Okay. You mean Gallons and the other short stories? Okay. Um, no big deal. Remember that they are all brothers or sisters in the same, and they have the same parent, which is the collection, right? With no discrimination whatsoever. They um, obviously communicate the same ideas and the same thoughts. If you haven't read them, you can always read them. We still have time. Okay. But don't get dismayed. Don't get frustrated or anything. You're doing fine. Okay. So we're talking about Clay, and again we started this with Eveline, women characters and the roles that they play, the major roles that they play. And in Clay we also have a female character, right? I mean a central female character. Do you know what her name is? What's her name? Maria, yes. And I need somebody because not so many people have read the short story, obviously. If I need Kamar or Sarah, if Sarah has read the short story, or Kamar, if she feels better, if she can come to the mic and perhaps give us the story in very small, in very brief terms, so that we can have everybody on board. Sometimes it's very, I wouldn't say boring. It's not very productive to have to talk about something that people cannot relate to because they haven't read the. Okay. Uh, Kamar is having a sore throat, which is something that we feel sorry for. Okay, Kamar, no worries. Okay, let me perhaps. I think we have it. If but don't ask me to perhaps make the. Can you read that? Okay, this read this part. The part that I am sharing, the website that I'm sharing. I'll give you 2 minutes to read it. No, no, no. It's a simple Thor, يعني sore throat, and it happens with everyone. Yeah, الأستاذ. So I trust that you're reading, right? Unfortunately, in this part, the part that you're looking at, you don't have a pure summary. You have a summary that is mingled with, um, analysis and description and labels that the guy is sticking to the character, describing her as a witch, which never happened in the original short story. And let me know when you have finished this part, okay? Just focus on Clay. Don't move beyond Clay, please. Give me 5 if you have finished. Hello, Staz, what's your first name? Abdurrahman. Okay. I assume that you're the only Abdurrahman in class. Can you write Abdurrahman next time? So this has taken too long, Gama. Where are you? Are you reading or what? Hello. Can you still hear me? Okay. Okay. Are you done reading, huh? Okay, so let's talk about it. So, Clay would be the title of the short story, and the main character is also a woman. And in terms of narrative, you have third person narrative. And the plot is very simple. It's about an old, um, I wouldn't describe her as maid, an old helper, somebody who helps in, you know, she has more than just janitorial roles. She works like more or less like a nurse in a house for old people. Um, Again, we're talking about perhaps a religious occasion that she will have. That I mean, the whole country or town is celebrating, and she's making provisions for that. She says that at night I'll go to a family that I used to work with, or a member of the family. She used to kind of raise and nurse one of those family members, and he is now married. She is going to go and celebrate with them, with the family, I mean. Um, she would go, and on the way, we're kind of following her while preparing for the occasion at night. While I mean, we go with her to the places where she's going to buy the items, the sweets and everything, and she would take the tram going to this family. And on the way, in she's going to get engaged in a conversation with a gentleman on the tram, and I mean, they started talking and stuff. And obviously, she got carried away with the conversation to the extent that when she left the tram, she left part of the presents that she was having for the family. It's the cake that she had. When she went there, she started to kind of I mean, they received her very well, and obviously they have a history together. She's family to them. They talk about the happy old days when the husband was a child, and how she raised him, and he had a brother, and they used to have fights, and she used to kind of interfere and reconcile them, and we had all of that. And all of a sudden, she remembers that she has left the cake that she had for the family or for the parents. She gets angry and upset, very upset, obviously, and they would say it's okay, and she starts to, I mean, kind of sing at one point, play games with them. What is significant would be the idea of singing, of course, and also the idea of having this game where they normally she has to kind of have her um, you know eyes folded, and she chooses from among there is a number of choices that she makes. She chooses something. She would choose a Bible. She would choose uh, a plate. She would choose other stuff, and one of the choices would be a piece of clay, a ring, like Kamar is saying. And depending on what I mean, what she chooses would determine, or this is what they thought, what would determine her future, her near future. She got her eyes folded, and she chose the clay. An interpretation of the clay is that she's going to die. It's an indication or a sign of early death. Okay. I mean, people got upset um, because of this bad omen, and she was given perhaps the opportunity to do it one more time, and this time around she chose a Bible. And the Bible, according to them, and according to the game, would be that she's going to go and give herself to, you know, religion and work as a nun for the rest of her life. Look at the choices. I would like you to pay very special attention, very close attention to the choices. It's either this or this. And obviously the choices that she had are very limited. Like Kamar is saying, one of the choices was a ring, and a ring is an indication of what? If she has chosen the ring, it would mean that she's going to do what? To perhaps do what? Get married? Yes, absolutely. Like Nabila is saying, get married. This was not a choice. She didn't choose that. She and this is all meant also by James Joyce. If your choices are between a Bible and a clay, of course you know the significance of a clay. Okay, people are more or less made of clay, right? This is how we started, and this is how we're going to end. Okay, again, you see the futility of human wishes. This is what we come down to, right? So again, the choices, not choice. She didn't choose actually. She just touched something. I mean, if she had the choice, she would have chosen something else. For saying that she has chosen would be a mistake, right? Because even the choices are very limited. The menu of choices is very limited. So again, as if society is giving me the choice and then withdrawing the choice from me. If the choice has to be between a Bible and clay, um, okay, and to a lesser degree a ring, it means that you're not, I mean, the scope of choices is not that big, right? Uh, so as you can see, we also have the spectacle of an old woman. We're not talking about a young woman anymore, because remember she used to raise uh, the father of the family. So you can almost tell how old she is. She's not young, and we're not. Um, Nobody says that she got married or she was even in a relationship to get married, for example. No. So her these are her prospects, limited as they are. So how would she compensate for that? I mean, the idea of not having a husband or in her life, um, not having any prospects of getting married. Uh, so how does she handle that? She um, gives very special and very close attention to details. She's keeping a fake image of perhaps organization, self-regulation, meticulousness when it comes to small details. Okay, this is a compensation that she is making. That's why she was angry with her, so upset with herself when she forgot the cake. Why? Because this is what she thrives through, the idea of being very punctual, the idea of being very organized, very attentive, those very small things. Okay. Yeah, she works hard. I mean, she works hard in order to perhaps um, keep herself busy because this is the only prospect that she has. She cannot afford to lose the job, also, right? Because if she loses the job over there, remember, she is. I don't know whether those who have read the short story noticed that or not. She wasn't happy at the beginning working in a Protestant institution. Remember, she. It seems that she is Catholic, and you know the tension between Catholics and Protestants in Ireland. Okay, so over time she would have to come to terms with the fact that um, there is nothing that she can do. This is the only job available to her, right? She has to do it very well, or she loses. And if she loses her job, she has nothing to do, right? So no job, no marriage, nothing. Again, this is a typical scenario. Um, this is a typical woman situation for women in Ireland at the time. They are not given proper education. They have to do everything for their families. They have to sacrifice their needs. They have to sacrifice their pleasures, everything for the sake of society. And then at the end, they are left with nothing. The only thing that they get from society, if they get anything at all, would be scorn, disdain, okay, more pressures. Yes, of course, they would give their the best part of their lives, their youth to society, and look what they get. Nothing, almost nothing. So it's a variation on the same thing that we have seen in Eveline, right? She's very good at mediating between people. Remember, she had this um, edge over the two children when they were children. The father, and he is now a father, of course. In the past, he was only a child, and his brother, and they used to fight, and she would interfere and mediate between them. This is what she can do best, which you would consider small things. Again, she thrives on these small things. These small things justify her existence. Otherwise, she would be left with nothing. Nabila is bringing something interesting to the conversation. She's saying because the loss of the cake was painful, the price was expensive considering her means. Actually, it wasn't about the price. What uh, uh, perhaps annoyed her was the idea that she is under the impression that she can nothing slips her mind, nothing slips her memory. She has she's very attentive. Okay, again, being attentive, being punctual, being organized are things that justify her existence. So if one of them is lost, it means she is lost. This is how she. This is psychological. Okay. Yeah. Are you getting the idea? So read the short story. I would like you to kind of read it again, and we can always talk about it next time. Let's move to the other short story. It's a painful case, and this one is painful, I promise you. Okay? So if you haven't read it, I'll give you 2 more minutes. We have perhaps a summary here, a painful case. That's the last paragraph. Read it from here, the last paragraph, so that we can talk about it very quickly. And then next time, I would like you to promise me to read everything, to read again uh, The Sisters, An Encounter, Eveline, Clay, and A Painful Case, and also the Dead, because we're doing the Dead next time. When you read them, I would like you to read them as if they are perhaps chapters in one book, which what they are, which this I mean this is how George James Joyce is or wishes, or this is how he wishes us to read them. They are all parts of a whole. The whole would be the whole collection, and these different short stories would be chapters in this big book. So I'll give you 2 minutes to read this part, and then we talk about it very quickly, and then next time we can have the whole gallery. We talk about them. You can have fresh ideas because you're going to read them once more. And then this would take like an hour, and then the other hour would be for the Dead. Who read the short story? Who read it? I mean, before class, A Painful Case. Who read A Painful Case? Okay. Okay, so let's talk about it. A painful case. So it's a case that is painful. Okay, no problem, Sarah. Sarah is saying that she didn't know that, and this short story is part of the course, and she promises to read it next time. Thank you. Okay, so a painful case. I mean, look at the title, and like I said, titles can tell you a great deal about what you are in for. So you are in for a case. This can be a criminal case, right? This can be a human case. You can never tell. What you are sure of would be that this case is painful, because the title promises So, right? So Kamar is saying it's the case of James Duffy. Is it the case of the male or the female? Obviously, no. This is not. This is the case of the lady. Uh, the If you have read the short story until the end, you would know. Yeah, man. This yeah. If you're guessing, that's good. If you're guessing, but this is actually not what is happening. Like Nabila is saying, we have a woman, and this woman is also uh, is a victim somehow. A victim during her life and even when she dies and after. You know something? I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'll stop on this note and with this item. I don't want to spoil it. I'll give you 5 minutes if you have questions about the TMA because the deadline is approaching. If you have you know something that you would like to ask me, um, I'll be more than happy to answer all your questions if they are reasonable questions, if they are not procedural questions, if they are not about the word limit, if they are not about how many references you should use, if they are not about the font. Okay. So again, I would like you to promise me one thing. I would like you to promise me to go over the short stories and read them with fresh eyes, with open minds. Okay, and go all the way to even the dead. I would like you to read the dead so that we can have a lively conversation next time. I think Nof is saying something. How is Stevenson's anti-imperial imperialist, yet he clearly makes his protagonist a racist? This is what I keep warning you from, everybody. Like I always say, you shouldn't be confusing the author with characters within the novel or the novella. Okay? So by presenting the protagonist as a racist, he is indicting and he is attacking racism, white racism. We're saying that Wiltshire is not totally or is not completely a racist. Uh, um, the way you look at, for example, Case, right? He's not a complete racist. The statement that Stevenson is trying to make here is that you can be tolerant, okay? You can be marrying a native, but you still have your affinities and your loyalty somewhere else. I mean, he's trying to say that you cannot completely get rid of your Englishness. Uh, it doesn't happen. It's not for everyone. If Stevenson could do that, he could get rid of his Britishness, if you like. The other characters, for the most part, cannot. But this is obviously the statement that he is trying to make by presenting Wiltshire in this way. Um, He got used to life on the island. He has a family whose members are, if not fully native, they are half native. But he cannot he cannot bring himself to fully and totally accept this kind of life. Are you getting the idea? Okay, good. So again, on this note and with this item, we come to the end of tonight's class. And until I meet you on Monday, inshallah, I wish you all the best. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bye bye.